because yeah, that's right. Okay, I think we're going to get started. We got a fair amount of people that said they were going to go on the Webex. So here's my Webex. We were not super technical on how to connect these, but so if we look down here, that's sort of what we're doing. And the sound we tested earlier. So we will be looking and talking to some of the folks in Webex also. Just recognize when we get to questions, then there will be people on here. And Thom, you sort of did check to see in Webex if everybody can hear me. I think we are good. Okay, so thanks for coming. We are going to be talking about the Metro School system. We've got Abigail Tyler, which is fantastic. She's our school board rep in the way, and we're excited that she came and get a chance to talk to us about our school system and what's going on there. Second part of this is we're going to then go over, and we talked about the repurpose of Hillwood High School now for 6 years. We are getting close to that time, right? So fall of 23, the new school moves to Bellevue. It's going to be a beautiful new school. In the meantime, we had Nashville next, and in that, I can read what we said we would do as a community. I think we did this 6 years ago, and we put that in Nashville next in planning. I'm going to go over that. Second, though, Abigail is new in this position after 2 years. I'd like you to reinforce all of your thoughts on what you would like to see for this area. We had talked, and we'll get more into that. Third part is we have some initiatives that are coming up that I want to touch base, and I'll get to more detail, but like the 170 split, we're starting to talk about safety. I'm going to have a meeting with John Ray Clemens and this community to start talking about how do we reimagine the 170 split. It has to be redone. We want it. We also want to look at the commercial area, but there's a lot of components on there that we want to start looking at. We have a schedule for September 23rd to have a commercial meeting, but also a meeting with public safety. It includes TDOT, includes our transportation, and includes all the companies along that way to take a look at it. Right now, we're scheduled for Westmead Plantation as our location, so that'll be coming up. But there's other things that we're going to be talking about as we get, and I think it's really important as a community that we start to pull together on those things. Masks, as you can tell, that we require masks within the school, and we really appreciate it. And I think you guys are pretty distancing and really appreciate it. We set up Webex last minute. When Abigail and I started this 3 or 4 weeks ago, we were like, this isn't going to be hard. We'll just do it all live, right? And then slowly, we've gotten closer, and slowly we realized we couldn't do it that way. But we really appreciate you coming out. So let me, any questions so far? That'll be the format. We'll go through this. There are some judges or candidates here. That got to be a little interesting at the time, but what we wanted to do is slowly, the election's in May. So we're 9 months or 8 months out. What we want to do is slowly bring in judges when there's a quality time where they can talk. This wasn't originally part of this agenda, so we didn't really make much time except at the end say, if anybody wants to meet, there's a meet and greet afterwards, and we're going to do that right behind us up in the lobby here. So as that happens, we'll do that toward the end. And that's our agenda. Any questions? Okay, let me introduce Abigail Tyler. I'm pretty excited. We've had some great conversations. Excited to have her and sort of talk through the Metro school system. Thank you.
All right, thank you guys for letting me come. I'm really excited to be here. Like Councilman Druffel said, we've been talking a lot over the last couple of months about how we can make sure that everybody's voices are being heard and that we are representing you to the best of our ability. So just a little bit about myself if you don't know me. I am a Metro student. I went through Metro Public Schools K-12, and then I came back and I taught in Metro Public Schools for over a decade. And now I have 3 children. All of them are now in the Metropolitan school system right now. So I have a lot of vested interest in the school system. I really want it to succeed, and now it's now. So we're going to start with Dr. Battle has coined this phrase that every student knows, which is her big push, and I am 100% behind it.
We didn't have.
Just a score.
I'm done switching
There we go.
computers, so.
I got it.
Got it. Okay.
So she started it off and she's kind of made it like a getting big to smaller. So we start off with our 4 tenets, which is basically the why. Why are we doing this? And it's basically to inspire, motivate, and bring people together. And that goes for students, community members, families. So if we look at our core tenets, we have 4 main core tenets. The first one is to re-envision the central office as a support hub. And they renamed it that, which sometimes renaming doesn't actually mean a difference. But one of the ways they've done that is last year when we were really struggling to find substitutes and our teachers were all quarantined and we were having a hard time keeping some of our schools open because of the lack of the ability to have enough adults there. We had our central office staff pair up one-to-one with the school, and they would come out once a week to do whatever the principal needed for them to do, whether it was to relieve a class so that a teacher could go do something, or if it was some filing work, or if it was providing some small relief to the office staff so that they could go get lunch while they answered phones. Whatever they needed to have done, the central office staff stepped up and helped with that. And kind of on accident, without, it's like an unintended consequence, they were able to really have a better connection with the schools than they've ever had before. Sometimes central office has been seen as very far away and different and kind of out of touch in the past. And with this new envisioning of them as a support hub and having them physically in the schools and back and forth and making those connections with the families and the students and the teachers, our central office.
I'm trying to get the picture.
So I'm proud of that fact.
It's not Zoom.
Now, if we, the next one, it's empower
Okay.
the
That's
leader.
not what I had before.
And one of the things that I love about this is Dr. Battle herself went through the Metro system. She was also a teacher in Metro and she was a principal in Metro. So she's seen what it's like on every level. And she's seen where there have been great successes and failures. And one of the things that she's learned is that every school is its own unique microcosm. And every principal is going to have small differences that they're going to need to implement for their schools to meet the unique needs of their learners. So what Westmead is going to need to do is going to be a little different than Harvard Valley, and it's going to be a little different than Gower. And so what she has done is really empower the principals to step up and take ownership of their schools to meet the needs of their unique learners. And the principals have also been allowed to kind of open up some of that leadership to their own teachers, which when you're not being micromanaged and when you're being trusted to be the professional that you are, you get better results. And so we've seen a large difference in the amount of positive reinforcement that we've gotten from community members after letting our principals have a little bit more say in what's going on and how to run things. So that's something we're going to continue to do. Going down to this green one, says create and support engaging, rigorous, and personalized learning experiences for all students, which really speaks for itself, but I'll also be going into it a little bit further in the next slides. And then finally, identify and eliminate inequities. And that is something that we've struggled with for decades. It has been an issue since I was a student. I know her mom went through public schools here as well, and it's something that she could speak to. We don't really have a problem identifying it. The issue is how do we eliminate it? So we have created some things that I'll be talking about to really help close those opportunity gaps that create problems with our students. All right, so that's the why, and this is the what. These are our focused outcomes. What are we hoping to, how are we hoping to see those 4 tenets in a way that is measurable? So here we have our core tenets in the middle, and these focused outcomes are around literacy and numeracy, which have always been kind of focused outcomes because they're the things that we can easily measure. So you usually see that on Tennessee Ready Test or TCAP as we used to call it. But Dr. Battle has taken it a step farther to say that we know that students are more than just a number on a test. And some of the things that predict their success in the classroom have nothing to do with the numbers on the test. And so she's added SEL or social and emotional learning as part of the focused outcomes that she wants to really spend time on and make sure that we're not leaving out. And then transitions is also something that is often forgotten about, but is really important. Whether it's a transition from year to year, some of our students have a summer slide a little bit, or a bigger transition from elementary school to middle school, or middle school to high school. Sometimes those transitions can leave our kids a little bit at ends and not quite sure of how to fit into the next level. And so one of the things that she's tried to do is really find a path to make those transitions safer and easier for all of our students. And so finally, we get down into our signature initiatives, and this is really the nitty gritty. How are we going to do all of these things? So this is giving us the guidance and the ways to get everything done. So there are a lot of them. I won't go through everything super in depth, but I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody has about these. You can also find them on the NNPS webpage. But just a kind of a quick overview, starting at the top with the personalized student dashboard. You'll notice that it has 4 little things, and those match up to our outcomes. So you'll see the book for literacy, this chart for numeracy, our SEL part with the hubs, and then our signpost for transitions. So the personalized student dashboard is intended to work towards all 4 of those focused outcomes. And they do that because it basically is allowing parents and students the ability to see in real time how they're doing, where they're struggling. And then students and parents can sit down and talk about where they see the issues, and teachers can put in input about this is how we're addressing this particular need. This is where we're seeing something that's fallen behind, and how are we going to meet that need? Results-focused innovation. Again, we're looking for all of these outcomes. And when we talk about results-focused, that means something that's measurable, that we can actually see that it's really working. Going down to the central office as the support hub, that helps with literacy, numeracy, and SEL, because it creates more of we're all in this together, and then it provides support to the schools individually. We talked about that a little bit. Metro Schools Reimagined. I'm really excited about this. This is the plan that moves 5th grade students back to elementary school. And we've been talking about doing this for years. There are so many studies out there that show that our 5th grade students at that age, that 10 and 11-year-old age, really need to be part of elementary school. But that's where they're going to thrive, and that's where they're going to show their best efforts, because they're not going to be overwhelmed by being with 8th graders. So we are moving them slowly as we can. Part of the holdup for this is that some of our elementary schools are not big enough to house 5th grade. So some of our elementary schools are actually going to require physical add-ons, or some sort of changes within the school system, changes within the school itself, whether it's, knocking out a wall or fixing something to make it a larger space for the students. And that's going to cost money. And that's part of the problem with figuring out how do we get them all back in a timely manner. And what we're hoping to do is use some of these federal ESSER funds to help speed this process along. And I know District 9 is one of the ones that requires 3 of our 4 elementary schools to have add-ons in order to be able to house 5th grade. And that means that we will probably be one of the last districts to be able to have this reimagining plan come to it. And with these ESSER funds, I'm really pushing Dr. Battle, and she's excited about doing it too, to try to find a way to use them and leverage them so that we can speed this process up and get our 5th graders back to 4th grade in elementary school as fast as possible. Innovative health response, and that's just really looking at the COVID response and making sure that we are keyed into what's happening with our students and providing the best help and response that we can. Virtual help centers, and I think if you saw the sign when you came in, it actually had a sign outside the virtual help center. It's actually also had physical help centers for every single different cluster. So Hillwood is the one where anybody in this area who struggles with their computer or something, they can just physically come here and get it, or they can get online and ask questions right there to help make sure that their family and their students are able to access what they need. Our equity roadmap, we have hired Asher Hughes, and he has done a really great job of parsing through the data and looking at the history of our school system to figure out where have we found opportunity gaps that we've not addressed, or that we've not addressed well. And how do we fix that? And so he's kind of created this roadmap that we can follow for moving towards taking those opportunity gaps and making them smaller. Promising Scholars was our summer school program that we just completed. It is something we plan to continue to do every summer. The leadership framework, it ties a little bit back into the central office as a support hub, but it also looks at one of the things I love about Dr. Battle, having been so in touch with the system herself, she understands that every school has unique needs. So she's not going to take the next person who is eligible to become a principal and stick them in the next school that needs a principal. She's going to be matching up the strengths and weaknesses of the schools with the strengths of the principals that are coming up, so that the leadership at the school is going to provide what the school actually needs. As a former teacher, I can tell you that you can have a fabulous, wonderful atmosphere in your school, and a leader and your principal can leave, and somebody new can come in, and it can be destroyed in a week. And in order to have our best schools possible, we need to have the best principals that are possible. And we need to make sure that they are empowered to do what they know is right for their students. So that leadership framework speaks to that. And also, again, that empower and equip leaders at all levels, that goes back to that core tenet. Coaching with Plan is a partnership that we've created, and it is online. It helps kids mainly at the university, but it has branched out with some other aspects too. But students who are struggling with math concepts, the Coaching with Plan lets them look at the specific concept that they have struggled with, see different videos of people explaining it in different ways, and having practice in different ways and getting feedback on that as well. So that's something that they can do at home, or they can do in the classroom during a personalized learning time. And it also provides feedback to the teacher, because the teacher has access to their account to see where are they working, where are they getting the same thing wrong over and over? How can we get back into that and fix it? And also, the thing I love about Coaching with Plan is that it's not just geared towards kids who are struggling. The kids who have gone beyond the grade level can go to Coaching with Plan and can be looking at algebra when they're in 4th grade if they're that far ahead. Or they could be looking at geometry when they're in 6th grade. So somebody who needs a little bit extra push can also get that through Coaching with Plan. Our literacy reimagined. We have completely overhauled the way that we're going to be doing reading. And as a former 1st grade teacher, I'm really excited about that, because reading is my jam. That's what I love to do. I love to teach kids how to read. And as I'm sure you've seen with our most recent numbers, our literacy has suffered. We knew that we were going to have a little bit of a dip based on the year that we had last year. And we have a plan for how to deal with that. And we have a plan for our teachers they've been going to training that will be, that is school-wide, district-wide, and then also there's state training that has been offered to our teachers for this new literacy reimagined as well. And then, so they will have the opportunity to not just have one training one time and then hope that they get it and implement it properly, but it'll be something that they'll be able to come back to and constantly reevaluate themselves to see if they're doing it the way that we're supposed to be doing it, so that we're actually teaching reading in a way that kids can learn. Our Navigator program, you may have heard about it. We talked about it a lot last spring. It was when we were fully virtual, we had every single student was paired up with a teacher, a special arts teacher, or somebody in the office staff, and they were contacted every single week. And we asked emotionally, how are you guys doing? Do you need food? Are you guys struggling to stay in a home? How can we support you? If we could not find the student after a week or two, we actually sent people to the last known address so that we could try to find these students. I think there was some concern last spring that some kids weren't signing on, they just were gone, they were lost. And that we were just kind of shrugging our shoulders, and that couldn't be farther from the truth. We were sending people, we were sending our guidance counselors, we were sending our social workers out to the homes to find these kids, helping them figure out, oh, you're not getting on because you don't understand how to use the computer. Let's go over this together. Or, oh, you haven't been signing on because English isn't your first language and you don't understand how to start this. So let's get a translator here and fix that. So this Navigator program really allowed us a chance to get granular with all of our students and figure out what do they need and how can we provide that. And it was such a success that it is something that we are going to continue going on into this year and into the future. High dosage tutoring, I'll talk about again in a second because it's going to be something I'm going to be asking of you guys. And then we have a new website that's just a little bit more streamlined and easier to read and follow. So those are a lot of signature initiatives. I am happy to talk about any of them that you have more questions about. At any time, you can send me an email or we can talk after this, whatever's convenient for you. So when we take all of these things together, the why, the what, and the how, we end up creating a space where our students are supported on all sides, from their families, from their communities, and from their schools. And that is how we are able to make every single student known. Now, how can we know? The high dosage tutoring can be individual volunteers if somebody just decides this is something I have a heart for and I'm willing to do this. Or it can be a group of people, maybe a church group or a synagogue or some other small group of people that are in a book club together and they've decided they want to also support the school system, but with tutoring. So you would have to be able to commit to 12 weeks of engagement so that we don't leave any of our students in a lurch. We need to make sure that if we're going to provide this for them, that we can see it through. And if that is something that does not appeal to you, or if you're a little bit concerned with the COVID issues going on right now, and you don't want to come into the schools, I totally understand that. You could also volunteer virtually. And you would be creating 5 to 20-minute videos about your expertise. What is it that you know how to do? Whether it is something that is a hobby that you have perfected, or if it was your job and you were able to create something that lets our kids have an insight into what that is and how they could maybe not have considered that as a job path and now they have it, or something that they didn't even know was a possibility for something to do in their free time. Now they've got that information in front of them. So that's another way that you can volunteer. And for either of these, whether you would like to be a tutor or volunteer virtually with some of these videos, you would contact Pencil to sign up. And that is at pencilforschools.org/volunteer. And I'm also happy to send that information out to you guys as well. And then if either of those don't appeal to you, or you know that you won't be able to do them, donations are always welcome, whether it is monetary or physical items. There is no school that will turn you away. So you would have to contact the principal of the school of your choice or the PTO president, and they would tell you, these are our needs right now. And you would be able to try to match the needs for what they have. Or if you just have a monetary donation, I guarantee they will accept every penny of it. And we thank you very much. Okay, finally, here are the different ways you can contact me. Email is the best. It's at the top, abigail.tyler. And this is tricky because everybody wants to make it Taylor or spell it with an ER. So just make sure when you're getting Tyler, it's Tylor. My husband doesn't like that I tell him it's weird. So, and that's at NNPS.org, like all Metro Public School email addresses in there. And then I have a Facebook page, a Twitter page, and then I have just a web page that I used when I was running. It doesn't have a lot of new information on it, but if you want to, you can sign up for there so that I would capture your email address and never to, if I'm sending something out in the email, I can make sure that it goes to you as well. Okay, so that's kind of a basic overview. Do you want to take questions about this or move on to forward? Perfect.
And if you're Webex, if you'll put on chat, and then we're going to alternate questions from here and then those on chat. We have a bunch of people on Webex right now. So we'll alternate questions as there are from each time.
Okay. Yes, we, every single time there is any sort of training that at the end of it, there's the opportunity for them to anonymously fill out a form that says whether or not they've found it. And I know that there have been some concern around the witness system and just what this new literacy reimagine is. Frankly, I have had some concerns around it as well. But our teachers are able to provide that feedback if it's something that they think that they need to have more information on, or provide some opportunities for a different view of. And that is a way that they do that. So every single time there's a training, they have that ability to have that feedback. Of course, they can always have feedback with their principal at any time that they feel like they need to let their principal know how they're feeling about the program. And of course, I always would welcome any feedback myself as well. Yes, sir. I'm sorry, she was asking about the Literacy Reimagine program and if anybody had checked in with the actual teachers. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Other questions? Thanks. I take this off when talking, so I'm not muffled. So thank you, and Representative John Ray Clements, thanks for coming. Appreciate that. I mentioned our meeting on the 23rd. Thank you for your support and getting the T-dot on that. I think all of us that go to that 170 split and don't think that extra half a second realize we're about ready to jump up into another lane. So thank you for helping on that. Next, we're going to talk about the high school and what do we want to do with that. Before I went back, and how many of you were part of that process like 6-7 years ago where we had those meetings? You were there. Okay, so there's a few of us there. So just to recap, 7 years ago, I think it was, when we knew that high school was under consideration for moving, we had a series of meetings, and they were pretty well attended. I think we had 50 to 100 each of those meetings. And during each of those meetings, we came up with a summary of what we thought was the best purpose. And so I'm going to read what we came up with that went into Nashville next under Hillwood High School. There's a consensus of this community that this SPA remain dedicated to public use known by the Metropolitan Government Metro, for the use of the Hillwood High School to cease the whole or its part. All steps should be taken to ensure continued use of the land as a school. The preference is for an elementary school to serve the shifting demographic of the Hillwood and Westmead communities. However, other levels of education should be considered, provided it meets the community's need for academically funded institution. In the event neither MNPS nor its partners wish to occupy all the property, partial use of the property for a school should be considered. All steps should be taken to ensure the remainder of the property can be considered for a park and community use, subject to review by Metro Board of Parks and Recreation. Consideration should be given for the way in which the property should benefit and complement the neighboring H.D. Hill school use. Special care should be taken to ensure a park or community use is not overly burdensome to the surrounding community. So that's sort of what we came up. I guess that's a summary. Does that sound about right when we were there? I think we all said this is what we want to happen. So in the fall of 23, the school will be moved. I think it's on Parkview, isn't it? Okay. So it's going to get moved to their new site. I know it's well underway to construction. With that, we have these 20-some acres in this area. This building is in 3 versions. The 2 side versions are older. The central version is a little bit more stable and in better condition. So with that, as most of us, I moved here about 20 years ago, and when we moved here, we recognized there's no park, there's nothing in the immediate area that supports our neighborhood, and we really think this is the perfect opportunity. So with that, we have an exceptional opportunity to take this and let Ms. Taylor know that this is what we would like to have. So like this, I asked each of you to fill out a form when you came in. Hopefully you have one, if not the lady with the mask, the white mask and the blue behind you gentlemen. Anyhow, she's gonna, my wife, she's gonna collect those. And for all those on our computer, if you could, under chat, send a note of what you think the purpose should be. And then we have some. And I'd like to hear not only general uses, but we'd like to hear specific uses that you think.
Yeah, I just want to say, so we've had a few discussions about it already on the board floor. It's been in special sessions or like committee meetings, not necessarily during a board meeting. But I want you to know that based on the information that Councilmember Druffel has already provided to me, and then also just from having talks with community members in the past myself, I have advocated for Parkviews, or for, we know that Westmead Elementary is set up to need a whole new branded school. And because it's going to be built on the same site as of right now, we would not have to have a place for those kids to go somewhere else in order for the new school to be built there. So there is some thought that maybe, and this is a little bit interesting, but because H.D. Hill was actually originally an elementary school, the thought would be not to send our elementary school kids to a high school building, but to let our middle school kids move to the building temporarily and have our elementary Westmead kids go to the building that is more geared towards their needs while we build the elementary school. And then people would go back. And then there's some thought about if this is a good spot for HD Middle School, that this could be something that we consider as a permanent location for HD Hill Middle School, if that is something that the teachers and the principals see as beneficial. So those were the two things. I have said very strongly that we do not want any development to come in to the area, and that we want to keep it open for public use. So that's what I have been advocating for. I've got my computer out so I can take the notes for you guys. Anything that you would want to add or suggestions that you have that are different, I'd love to hear them.
Thanks so much for your support on that. I'm just here so they can see me too, and they can't throw anything at me here, so that's okay. I'd like to, this is now an open meeting. I'd like to hear from you anything specific that you think would add value to our neighborhood. We've heard park and all that, but what specific things would you like to talk about? Again, we have Abigail here, and I think it's good for her to hear from us. And I saw a lot of head shaking. Yeah, we want to keep this for our community, and we can do something pretty special. I mean, when you take a look at the tennis players, so you have the tennis courts, and we could do something special. The baseball field, for example, there's overflow from some of the other baseball fields, and they could put baseball leagues over here. So there's all these opportunities, but this is for. We have a year and a half. So here's the way it works. We need to hear from you so that in the fall of 23, which sounds like it's a long ways away. It's not as much as the state, you probably work in 5 to 10 years, but even for us, 2 to 3 years, we need to put something that is in our capital spending plan to the mayor. Usually that comes October, November. So we already have something in our capital spending plan that said, repurposing Hillwood High School, but there's not many specific things. That just says we want this in general, right? And we have support, I think. I got a chance to talk to Mayor Cooper, and I think we have support for that. But the more specific we get, the better chances we can work around it. So we'd like to hear any specific issues. Now, I asked you to all write that down, but at the same time, and if you in the chat, Thom, if you hear from anybody that would like to hear. Okay, so anybody have comments here? Yeah. And I'm gonna, do you mind coming up here? That way you can talk, and if you don't mind, and I got my mask right here, so everybody can hear on this side.
All right, so I'm under the impression that the land is 33 acres, is that correct? And also, that seems like that would be enough land to have a community center, which would include a library, have this little school if we have to move it, and the rest would be park and recreation. The idea being this would be for the whole community. And I think I speak for most of us who would say that we do not need more giant houses on small lots at all. We have our fill. Thank you.
You're running for mayor next week? No, absolutely, that's what we have heard, and there were some comments along the way that it was under consideration. I don't know how far that got, but the reality is, I don't think this community would ever support that. I think that's pretty strong.
And I would fight against that.
Yeah. Hey, Thom is our chat watch list. Anything else on there, Thom? Yeah, and I'll repeat that if there's any questions or comments. We're sort of at this thing where this has got to, visually see so we can keep everybody engaged on Webex. Right.
See part of the space to be for Westmead.
Okay, so did everybody hear that? People like it as a welcome center to some degree for Westmead Hillwood. And something we're going to talk about briefly in a few minutes is some of the things we're doing with committees and a partnership council to work on a hospitality piece. Okay. Paul Garland?
Yes. Park and W community.
Okay, they would like a park and community center, similar to Bellevue, where there's activities for children, et cetera, which again, the space we have is phenomenal.
Martha doing basically the same thing.
Okay, so repeat community center, park and library use. When you look at the space we have, I think if you ever walk around the space, we got a lot of space here. I mean, it's pretty cool. Okay, I'm a dog lover. There's a natural dog park right over in the corner with a fence around it. Now, it's not that simple. It really isn't that simple. I talked to Parks, you got to do more. But the reality is we have some natural space that would only take minimal changes. So the process from here is, and if I hear everybody correctly, we want to keep this for ourselves primarily if we can rehab it as a school, or even if it's a temporary school. But even with that, you can see that we have enough space for a park and library. The really cool thing is that we actually have a library here. I think it was the Ingram Foundation that gave us $1 million library. But who is it? Who? Huh? Ingram, yeah, okay, Ingram, that's what I thought. So it's a $1 million library if you ever get a chance to come in. I have a lot of meetings up there. It's beautiful. So you wouldn't even have to change, and that's in the center part of our building. One of the things I heard when I first got here was that the seniors, we used to do senior classes in this building years ago. So there's an opportunity to go back and do senior classes and senior training, which I think is another great opportunity. Any other, yeah, go ahead. Yeah, that's, so to repeat the question, so that everybody can see, the comment was when the Hill family donated this, they expected it to be a school in perpetuity, right? And that's not required, is what I understand. I've talked to, right.
The deal was that they would not give it if it was not going to be used as a school immediately. But there was no clause in the contract that said that it must continue in perpetuity. Some people, some,
No.
we looked at it because I asked. And I wanted to also know if it was not going to be a school, if it was required to turn over into parkland, because that's what I hoped it said, but they also said that that was not part of the contract.
So there's no,
So is that really did?
They could turn it into a Hillwood.
yeah, well, yeah, it's,
I thought Ditto Park really wanted to.
that's the original purpose, absolutely, but there was no continuation of that. And everything that I've learned and read and Mr. is the same thing. So I think we're inconsistent with that. Now that I checked with Mr. Granberry or whoever and along the way to make sure we are doing something consistent with the Hills wishes from that point on. Because, I mean, they donated and they've donated so much. We want to make sure we're consistent with their uses. But I'm pretty sure, I think this would be something they would be proud of as we work on. And folks, yeah.
And the redesign for the Hill.
Okay.
Is there enough on that property? Drop off. The issues that take place in the morning and in the afternoon. One of the meetings that I attended early on. I even that working with Hillwood, giving some
Right.
schools so that there could be plenty of safe drop-off parking and
Okay, for those on Webex, the question and concern is the drop off at H.E. Hill is always a concern. And I know and Maggie's here and they work their tail off to do. Yeah, and maybe Maggie could speak to that with the realignment or with this school, if as Abigail said, if this could move over here to the school, then the reality is that could change quite a bit. So there's opportunities, but also there's spacing opportunities that could be addressed. And so, Maggie can address that. Maggie is our community coordinator from H.G. Hill, and so Maggie, you want to come up here so that people on the computers can see you.
And y'all, while she comes up, you need to know how amazing Maggie has been.
She is amazing. I got it.
The amount of money that she has brought in to support them, it is phenomenal, so.
Very sweet, thank you. But I have to say this, I'm also a neighbor, so I'm here, I guess, I'm here as a neighbor tonight. But also ironically, I am the person who runs the car rider line at HTL in the morning and the afternoon. So you asked the right question of the right person. And I can tell you this, we have been doing, at my insistence, some motion studies to know how many cars come in. And it's fewer cars than it has been in the past. It's about 120 cars that come in. And the problem is, and Thom and I have talked about it a little bit, but we have kind of I have some non-engineering solutions, which is two things cause the problems. One is when the car riders leave, the people who are trying to make a left turn onto Davidson hold up the rest of the cars in the loop. If everybody was forced to turn right, that keeps the line moving, right? Does that make sense? And so the issue is you have to educate your car rider families to know, how do you get through the neighborhood if you go right? I'll answer your question in just a second. How do you go through if you go right? A lot of those people, we have kids that are in Bellevue. So that's where a lot of them are going anyway. And that's a simple fix. The harder fix is in the morning and the afternoon are the people who are headed east on Davidson making a left turn in. So you can do some signage. The easy one is right turn only to get people out and get the line moving. The harder one is no left turn in because, and this is where we're still looking at it with our school resource officer, then you have to potentially you back up the four-way stop sign at Post and Davidson. And so that's something we're cautious about doing as well. There's a little bit of paving we have looked at where maybe 2 lanes can go out. It's a dangerous situation. It's dangerous for the bus. And I'm here to tell you, the buses and the metro, I'll tell you, they are complicit as well. They go right around the traffic on Davidson, and somebody's gonna get hit head on. The good news is, we have one walker at HG Hill. We have one student that comes from Hill Place, and we walk him safely, but our bigger issue is keeping cars moving on Davidson. I'm a longtime car rider person, as a person who drove the hookup line for 12 years for my kids. So I promise you I'm on it. And I think most people would say it's better. Most people I talk to say it's a little bit better this year. But I promise we're working on it. And what was your question, ma'am? Exactly. That's exactly the model that I looked at. It used to be that if you went down Hobbs at the wrong time of the day, you got stuck in the Julia Green line. And the problem isn't the neighbors, because you all know every shortcut through the neighborhood and every workaround. The problem, as I see it, are construction crews, delivery vans, et cetera, that are coming from the west side. They're using Davidson to cut through to Harding and to Westmead and points beyond, Green Hills, points beyond. So I can't do much to educate that. So what I have to do, though, is be respectful of the neighbors on Sudbury, because that's where the traffic would go. Teach people the workarounds, work with Thom, work with the police, get some paving done, but I promise I'm doing it. I didn't mean to hijack your meeting. And volunteer to tutor at HG. If anybody wants.
I've watched that intersection forever, and there's no easy answer unless we do that. But Maggie talked to me about just doing a right turn only would help a lot, because I've gone through there, and at least you don't have those people waiting to go left, which backs up everybody else. So that's really good. Okay, so yes, sir. The question for everybody, what's the obstacles to convert this to parkland from metro schools? And Abigail, did you want to talk about that?
Yeah, if we were gonna convert it to parkland, we probably have to sell it to Metro Parks. And so I think the biggest obstacle to that would be coming to an agreement that works for both of us and making sure that we're gonna get a fair trade for that, and that they're gonna be able to use the land for what you guys want to use it for. So that's kind of the first one, because we would not maintain ownership of it if that's the way it goes. We would sell it to Metro Parks. So then from there it becomes a Metro Parks. How do they foresee the use? I'm sorry.
What was the question? Yeah, there would be some acknowledgement from libraries that they would want to use this as one of their sites. The good news is this area, it does have, there is some opportunity for libraries. You have one in Bellevue, and you have one near Richland Park, but otherwise, and that could be expanded, but this would be a perfect central spot for libraries. So those are good. And when you have a facility that's $1 million library that's beautifully set up, it seems like that would be a low cost option. So the really important points here are the information that we're gathering here will go back to help create what planning does in terms of when we say repurpose this location. Again, Abigail would be an important source, but also going to parks and say, here are our priorities in terms of parks. Here's a community center, working with facilities with MNPS to see what we can cross-use without tearing down, knowing that there is some stable space, and really working and detailing that. And it sounds like that's 2 years out. That's a long ways, but that's not too far, because again, the process goes where the capital money, we ask, each district asks for capital money, October, November. It's due, I think, November 1st. When we take that money, it goes into a big bucket of projects, right? There's like $2 or $3 billion of projects. This district's been asking that for a couple of years. From that, the mayor goes through that bucket and decides what are his priorities. He asked us, of course, in this particular case, in the past, it probably wasn't as evident, because this school was still here and it wasn't fully funded. Now it's fully funded to go to Bellevue. So now we can't let this building sit as it is. So the opportunity then comes back to really pushing the dime to say, oh, hold it, you know, we got to do something with it. So whether we just sell it to parks or whatever combination that is, we're in a much better, stronger position so that we will find in February whether he'll support it. That we don't even need it this next year, but we'll need it in 22 to spend. And so when it moves, we can backfill. Hopefully, my hope is we backfill right into those purposes, supporting whatever school needs, and then back purposing the parks and the community center. Does that make sense? So it's a 2-year process. Yes, ma'am.
So it's Metro Schools because we own it right now. So we're the ones who make that first decision, and if we choose to sell it, then it becomes a negotiation about what are the terms of the use of the land if we sell it.
Yeah, so the question is, whose decision, I'm helping people, whose decision that was, and it is Metro Schools first, it's sort of like a right of refusal in a way. And then they can expand from there. Yes, ma'am. It's a good question. Abigail. The question is, what is the timeline for Westmead and move, et cetera, and Abigail?
Well, so Westmead has been at the top of our capital needs list for the last several years. And the way that Metro's capital needs list goes is we have an independent group come in and score all of our schools based on the structure, the use, the age, all the things that could make something a more pressing need or a less pressing need. And so Westmead has been in that top 10 for several years. When we present our capital needs budget to the mayor's office and to the council, we give them our top 10 in no particular order. We give it to them in alphabetical order. And if they decide to fund it, then they decide to fund it by project. So Westmead's been on there for a long time and it has not yet been chosen as the project that they're going to fund. So it just stays in that top 10. So we have been, I've talked a lot with Karen McIntyre and some of the other people that are out in the Westmead area about how do we advocate to get it actually funded to make it work and to have it done sooner rather than later. And it's not really, I have suggested the moving of the people around, but that's not necessarily what is going to happen yet. We're trying to figure that out, and that decision will be made when we know that it's going to be something that we start on. Were you going to add something?
I know, I was gonna ask something,
Yeah.
and I want to recognize, I'm asking the neighbor with, children who have potentially children. As you're doing all this and as it's all switching around, are you giving any serious thought to rezoning the whole thing? It's just, my daughter, my younger daughter lives on Keyway. It is, it's close to Westmead, and that street is zoned for Gower. It's
Yeah.
just like, the zoning, and I can explain to other people like why it worked the way it did to achieve kind of plurality in schools, but it's kind of starting to not make sense anymore. And so is that something you're gonna give thought to?
That is something that I was asked when I was running, and I would still say I would support that because, oh, sorry, I definitely would support that because it is, we've got kids that are literally their backyard is a school and then they're getting on a bus and going 30 minutes somewhere else.
And we're starting to see a lot of young people move into this neighborhood, and because it doesn't make sense, I think the schools are losing. That's.
Margaret, did you have a question?
I would agree with that. I'd like to second that.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, I used to teach there. It was a heartbreaking loss.
I agree. And I think when we originally had the zones created, the population was not the way it is now. And there weren't as many subdivisions that have since popped up since then. And all the new development, although it's been a little bit slower on our side of town, it's really picked up in the last several years. And the new additions of people have made the current zones not make as much sense as they should. So I am in favor of redoing the zoning for that.
Good. Yeah, you have a question.
I think this has been covered. That all school properties are pocket parks. Not sure what that means.
Pocket
Pocket parks.
I'm not sure what that means.
It's kind of like
The old school and Dolly Farmer. I don't know. I'm not aware of that, but
I'm not either. Do you know something about it? Oh. Yeah, I can find out about that and reach back out to you if you will like drop your address, email address into the chat. I'll find out what that is and get back to you on it.
Park is just a small park. For example, the Westmead waterfall is
Okay.
called by Metropolitan a pocket park.
Okay, so a pocket park is just a small park and it's.
Definition, the tennis courts here.
Oh.
Is that a piece of this property considered park? And you look the parks. That's why the public has access.
Okay, well,
Mhm.
well, and that's,
For sure.
I think that's an important part of how we do this is getting parks involved. I think there's positive financial opportunities for that too, as you look at.
Yeah, well, the hope would be that it'd be much larger than a pocket park.
Yeah.
I have a question about, bidding, looking at most economical and the least destructive. Waste, tear down this building we're standing, I mean, that's, anybody looking at that as part of the decision?
That is definitely considered, yes.
Metro schools.
Metro Schools, our facilities director has that as part of his decision-making
Mr. Pro-
process.
Mr. Pro-
Yeah, David Prophet is the
David
one who does.
Prophet does that. That's what they
Is that
look
a
at.
good-
Mhm.
Yeah, it's a good name for someone that looks at cost, profit, cost. Any other questions before, yes, ma'am?
I mean, this ties into this one. If this pool is used temporarily, are there going to be improvements in the building? Again,
As of right now, I would say no, just because as of right now, it is still considered Hillwood High School. And since the funding has gone to build a new school, we're not allowed to spend any more money on the old school. So I think we would have to get to a point where we have officially moved this out of being Hillwood, period, and opened it up to something else before we would be able to contemplate investing any more money in it. And I think that's kind of more clerical, I would imagine, so.
Did you have a question? Yeah. Okay, yeah.
Mhm. Okay, Charlotte Park?
Gower.
The Gower, okay. Gower and HD Hill. Gower and HD Hill is where the apartments that have recently been built. Yeah, so far, almost all the new construction that's been built in this area is going Gower and HD Hill for middle. I'm sorry? Yes, yes, Gower is located right off the interstate exit, 199 Old Hickory. If you get off of it and then take a right towards McKay's, it's on the other side of there.
Yeah, it's in the school district. It's not in our metro county.
Yeah, it's not in this district, yeah.
But it is in Abigail's. Any other questions? Tom, any other questions? Okay. Wow. Thank you. Hopefully we got all the questions. I'm going to put this in a pattern and go over with Abigail to make sure so that as we put this capital request in, it's pretty clear. And then I'll keep you updated. But I can't imagine that they aren't going to backfill with some purpose here. Next thing I wanted to talk about briefly is some of the things we're going to do in the community. And then we have judge and judge candidates back here and give them a few minutes as we close. One of the things we're trying to do is there are several initiatives. I mentioned that John Ray Clements is going to work with us to try to work on that 170 split. We've talked to Lucy Kemp, the director of planning, to see could we reimagine that whole area. So how do we get sidewalks down there? How do we make it look like it's part of our community? It's sort of just been built in hodgepodge in some way, right? So how do we make that work? That's an important meeting. But there's other things. One of the things, Susan, you want to talk for a second? One of the things that we are working on as a partnership council. First of all, Maggie is working with some community outreach programs. And so we have this, what we've created as a partnership council. And with that, we have a bylaws and then an organization. And then just to acknowledge, Wayne is our treasurer. Pat Lawson is our president. Carol Rayleigh left, she is our secretary, but we're pulling together every community. So it's Belmead Links and Belmead Court, Hillwood, and every community is part of this partnership council. And the reason is to keep a strong voice, but also to advocate for some of the things we do. One of the things that we want to work on is, if you don't know, there's these hills back there that are beautiful, about 200 and some acres between us and Bellevue. It's called Westmead Hills. And what we started to do is seeing some developer or two try to get into these areas, right? So Susan Law's been an advocate. In fact, I don't want to be on the other side of Susan when this happens, but we decided to be more proactive and created Friends of Westmead Hills. You see the Friends of Warner Park, etc. These are the last hills, and on a Radnor to River component, we think this would be a phenomenal opportunity for us. So as Susan, and she is chairing the Friends of Westmead Hills, so I wanted her to talk for a few minutes just to let you know what we're doing there. And if you could, Susan, talk there so people could see you.
Yes. I'm Susan Castle, and if you want to contact me, my email is susancastlelaw@gmail.com. I'm the chairman of the Friends of Westmead Hills. We've gathered together some people in the community and formed a board. We hope to also, we will be a working board. And we have a few more seats available if any of you are interested in being on the board. We meet every 6 weeks, and we will be meeting at St. David's Episcopal Church on September 1st from 6 o'clock to 7:30. We are just now getting our agenda together, but basically it's sort of a conservation agenda. We hope to be protecting the canopy. We hope to be a watchdog agency or organization for inappropriate development in the neighborhood. We are learning together about how development and planning, with public works, with stormwater, how to be effective in the community to prevent inappropriate development. We want to start a program where we let neighbors learn about how vines can strangle their trees and damage the canopy. And Thom has some ideas about establishing some trails. Radnor to River conserved 217 acres of woods and fields between the end of Rolling Fork and Old Hickory, and we're hoping at some point in time to get some trails going on those lands for people to use in the neighborhood in District 23 to use. So if anyone's interested in participating, they can contact me. Again, it's susancastlelaw@gmail.com.
Thanks, Susan. And this is one area that I don't think any of you, when I first moved here, it's like, what do we have up there? It's beautiful. There's a guy named Willie who's amazing. He took me on a ride or a trail. He took me through some trails and showed me some of these old trees. And we have some of the oldest trees in this area. It's pretty amazing stuff. So, we have this great community, and how do we grow this community to make it more exciting, more interesting? And we have a bunch of opportunities, I think, because when you come in, you have no idea that you're in Westmead or Hillwood. You have no idea that we have that up there. And these are amenities outside of what we can put here at this Hillwood High School. We have an opportunity to turn all this into things that our community can engage with and really enjoy for the next couple of generations. And you see all these young kids coming in, it's amazing. We have a trail through there would be just a fun thing. We don't have sidewalks, so that's the kind of place we could possibly truly use. So we are, COVID sort of sidewind us a little bit on some of the things we were trying to do, but we're back on track. One of the things that I'm proud of, Maggie and Wayne and Carol, when there was a food, if you remember the tornadoes 2 years ago, and they jumped up, Maggie jumped up and said, all the students are suffering up in North Nashville, some of the students that came here. And we did a food drive. And I remember helping Maggie out front, dragging food in, and we did that, and their whole place, cafeteria was full of food, and we all took it up there, and that got to be pretty tough. And so they started getting cash, and we started collecting money, and we call it the Hope Foundation. So we started collecting money, and Westmead United Methodist started helping us with all this, and we really appreciated that. But we raised, I think, over $15,000, and part of the partnership council is to pull that together under a 501c3 so we can continue to raise money and do those kind of things. So hats off to these guys. We're doing it. But as a community, we can give back to areas in our community. So we're doing that. We're trying to be proactive and doing a lot of stuff. Judge and Judge Cancel, we got 15 minutes. So if you would want to take 1 minute to say hi, and then come up here just for a quick say hi. If anybody wants to meet them, we were going to meet right out in the meet and greet here. So if you want to be, and this was really one of these, I've got to know a few of the judges, and it's one of those things, do you ever get to know a judge? Unless it's bad news, right? It's like, well, we could get to know maybe the candidates and the judges on the good side, right? And so we know them. So I thought it would be worthwhile. Just so you know, there's 40 candidates, so it's really too tough to get everybody, but I've confirmed that I will try to get through the next meetings before the May election to try to get in a more elaborate forum. I just didn't know how much time we had at the end. So each of them, if you just come up and introduce yourself for a second, and then they'll be right outside if you had any questions. And this young lady I know really well because I work with the academies. Ms. Sheila Calloway, Judge Calloway, she's our youth justice. So thank you. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Thom, for the invitation to come here. And I've known Thom for years. We worked together with the academies of Nashville and the chamber and doing a lot of work for the school. Because there's one thing that I always know is that youth who are not connected to the school systems are the ones that commit crimes in our community. And so what I believe is prevention. And if I can prevent children from coming to the court system, then we have a safer community, and we're doing a whole lot of work. And I'm proud to say that over the last 7 years since I've been the judge, we have reduced crime almost by 60% for our youth. And I have a staff of about 125 people. Oh, by the way, I didn't say who I was. I forgot all of that. I am Sheila Calloway. I am the juvenile court judge. I've been in office since 2014. And we have a staff of about 125 people. And we work every day to prevent problems, to promote the positive potential of all of the youth that come into our courthouse, and to pursue fairness and hope. And we work hand in hand with the school system. I feel sometimes I live at the schools because I absolutely know that that is our connection to stopping the problem. And so I thank you all for the invite and for coming here. I appreciate you, Thom.
Thank you. Yeah, Sheila, our Jeff Holloway, I gotta say, we knew each other in the academies. We sat next to each other, and she has a smile, and she's the happiest person in the world. And she handles all her job in such a wonderful fashion. I mean, everybody that knows her, and I can give personal testimony because I know her so well. But just a person that we should be proud of that works with our youth. So thank you for all you do. Really, thank you. Judge, would you like to come up?
Thank you.
Stand, if you'll stand right there so we can see on there.
I see, of course. I'm Wendy Longmire, and I am not a judge, but I am running for judge. I would like to be a judge. I echo what you just said about Judge Calloway. She is a light and a delight and is serving our community well. I am running for First Circuit Court, which is a civil court, and that is where you're trying lawsuits in front of juries and also judges, sometimes with a jury, sometimes with a judge on the bench making those decisions. I practiced law for 35 years in Davidson County at the same law firm, trying lawsuits and all sorts of issues in front of judges in circuit court. This position is open, and it seems like a good opportunity for me to offer my 35 years of experience in the very court I'm running for back to this community. And I believe I'm very qualified for the position. I'm very passionate about applying the law fairly and equally. And we need good judges that do that. And I certainly know when I'm in the courtroom how critical it is to have a judge that has actually had experience trying the cases that you're trying in front of them. So I would like the opportunity to meet you. Thank you for having me, to earn your consideration and your vote. Thank you very much.
Sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Councilman Druffel, for the invitation. My name is Marcus Floyd. I'm running for General Sessions Court Division 7 here in Davidson County. And just to chime in a little bit, we just moved over to Post Road in July of last year. And I'm going to tell you that if we put a library and a park here, my 10-year-old is going to have her knapsack. She's going to move in. So that's my suggestion. Oh, thank you. At any rate, I'm running for General Sessions Court Judge Division 7 here in Davidson County. I hope to bring a new and needed perspective to the bench. Personally, I was born in rural Mississippi, the Mississippi Delta. My mom moved us here right before my freshman year of high school to give us sort of a better opportunity at life. I went on to graduate from Hillsborough High School, went to Middle Tennessee State University, put myself through college, and then went on to law school. I became the first member of my family to graduate college and put myself through law school. I went on to serve as a probation officer, helping people put their lives back together after they had been saddled with a criminal conviction. Served as a prosecutor, protecting vulnerable victims, prosecuting violent crimes. I was a policy advisor in the mayor's office, and now I serve as a public defender, sort of helping people, sort of the least among us, really, people with mental health issues, navigate the criminal justice system. I hope to bring all of that experience to the bench and establish a fundamental fairness in our court system. So I would appreciate support, your vote. I'll be in the back, and I'm happy to speak with you all further. Thank you.
So the process, I think, in the future will have probably at one of these meetings every month or two, while we know the 23rd will be next. And somehow incorporate the opportunity for judge and judge candidates the chance to come and meet us and talk. It's not one that I ever, looked forward to, and nor did I look forward to seeing a judge, because I always thought I was in trouble. And I really didn't want to get there. But there's some really warm human beings that you just don't get to know because they're doing things and you don't get around them so much. So I think that's going to be an opportunity. The election, I think, is in May. Is that correct? So by May, I'm hoping that we get, we've got 3 here, and I think there's a total of 40, but I'll figure out a way that we can poll the judges and the candidates. They have a couple minutes to talk in front of you and get to know you in a meet and greet and through some of these meetings. So we got plenty of time, don't want to rush it. But if we bring too many at one time too, I think there's not a value of it'd be very difficult to have 20 to 30 people all come through and, for everybody to pay attention to. So we'll try to do this on a very fair and consistent way. Okay, that is all we have. Any questions or suggestions? Any questions I can answer? Yes? I know, I won't, you can't answer. No, go, okay, go ahead. Okay. Yeah, Councilor Murphy had a meeting. The question was, for everybody. Okay. That you want to be at one of those apartments. Yeah, and the question for everybody on the computer is the Steinmart apartments that are going to go in, and the concern. And just so you know, I've been on every one of Kathleen Murphy's meetings and expressed my concern on the traffic, because the first meeting was really, I can't say a joke, but it was a very difficult one to swallow, that more traffic lights will make it better for all of us, right? Well, no, I don't quite get that, but I have to say that with a smile. I've continued to express my concerns. Originally, Council Lady Murphy was against it. I have not had a chance to talk to her about what her current position is. They've made some adjustments, but 300, that number of apartments coming out of that area, to me is just crazy. I will continue to oppose anything in any place I can. It will be partially up to her. That's right. Okay. I'll get that information out so that everybody knows. But if you have a concern, it's good to oppose it, because when you think about commercially, when things came in out of Steinmart, really it was on a pretty even flow. But now you put 300 apartments all coming out at the same time, makes no sense that it would be good. And all their traffic people keep saying it's going to work. I don't personally agree. I've not seen any information that would make me support that. But again, it's a little bit of it'll be Kathleen Murphy's probably determination, but community input will be very valuable to raise your concerns. And it's usually the virtuals. So if you go on those virtuals and just, I know we expressed our concerns when we did on the chats. And to continue to do that. I mean, there's no reason we can't do it. If it has to go to a special meeting, I can try to do that at the council floor to try to oppose that. So I totally agree. I don't want any more traffic like anybody else. We're already getting all the other apartments down Charlotte. And the last thing I will touch base is on rezoning. Some of you have heard that we're about ready to rezone because of the census. And that's going to be coming up in the fall. It got delayed slightly because the census was behind bringing information. Our district probably, from what I gather, isn't going to change a whole lot. There's pieces like there's apartments on Old Hickory out there that seem to not make so much sense. And then there's places on the edges that I would like to add on where the Walmart and that area, just because I think it's more naturally part of this district. And then hopefully we get this homeless encampment fixed, and then in a year or two, and then we'll be able to actually make that another park in our community. And that's a whole separate conversation I don't want to get to. I'll be glad to answer questions. I've been actually working on that weekly on some solutions. There's a thing called Fuse, which is a strategic solution that I've been talking to Chattanooga and some places with the Judge Rosenstein. So we're working on something with a more strategic note, not only do we need to solve this, but we need to solve it more strategically throughout the entire city. Otherwise, it'll just keep on coming through. And there's some great solutions out there. Actually, when I started talking to some others that have started working on it, they have some pretty cool ideas. So anyway, there's more coming. Yes, sir. Yeah. Yeah, that's a very difficult thing, because you got a property rights issue. And Angie Henderson is starting to work on that. I will jump on wherever she comes, because she has got some good ideas. And so I asked her that I can get involved to work on some of that. Because there are some that are developers that will try to do the best they can, and then there's some, we just saw one that they just literally tore every tree out. I can honestly say this is sort of funny. We had a tree hugging success on 504 Hickory Valley, or Rocalo, where there was a tree, 80-year-old red oak, was going to go down, and we were able to save it by just working with the developer and moving things just a little around and making some accommodations for them, and we saved an 80-year-old tree. So we didn't jump in front and save it, but we got that whole canopy saved. So there's, to answer your question, the big picture is we got to have a better set of plans for those that are coming in, and especially in our neighborhood where I just saw a lot that literally they tore almost all the large trees out, which in my mind is inexcusable. There's property rights, but then it should only go so far. So I totally agree with you, but we have to have some better legislation. The last legislation was around commercial areas, and now we have to do a little bit more around some of these houses that are coming down. Yeah.
And I was curious, is that
Yeah, that's it's different. It's in terms of where kids go from that perspective, either Gower or Westmead, not zoning in terms of zoning specific space. Does that make sense? Okay.
these are the two votes? Where do you vote, and who do you vote for?
Right. Thom, is there anything else that anybody's asking on chat? Okay. Yes, sir. Okay, here's the good news. No, I think Representative Clemens has got a good news comment on that. Isn't there a plan right now? Yeah.
I will say, projects are being ordered constantly, and we just got leapfrogged, like my Charlotte Winery project just got leapfrogged by the Oracle project. I can't make it right that time.
So for those on the Webex, Representative Clemens is here, and he said that some of the projects that we had in terms of that project got leapfrogged because of Oracle downtown, which I wouldn't have voted that way if I knew that. But anyhow, that's frustrating. But we all know I come off that exit. It's crazy. I mean, that potholes for there a while there. I mean, I thought my car was going to go in the pothole. I mean, it was so bad. But hopefully, that Charlotte exit and that whole corridor, I know from Metro, but they have to work around TDOT, and that's the reality of that problem. If you have a chance, say hi to some of our folks back there on the way out and get to know them. And, you know, there are leaders, and we, you know, a judge has to run for election. That's a pretty tough thing to do when you have to make some pretty tough decisions. So any other questions? Okay, that's it, guys. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Thank you, Ms. Tyler, for coming. I appreciate that. So thank you.